It's 8:45pm on Wednesday, the 7th of September 2016. This is the Cats Whiskers Podcast, live. Hello and welcome to the show. On tonight's show we're going to be looking back at Panthers' 3-1 defeat in Coventry, where Tina also spoke to Blaze coach Danny Stewart post-game. We'll also look at the other Challenge Cup results from the weekend. We'll discuss Tony Smith's Elite League interview with Seth Bennett and also all the issues raised from it. Ice Hockey UK's statement today around a closer governing body, and also the other Elite League news will also be discussed. Before we end with looking at Panthers' triple weekend in Scotland against Dundee, Braehead and Fife. Joining me to cover all that are Tina Taylor.
Hello.
Andy Haywood.
Evening.
And Aaron Lord.
Hello. You
can interact with us during the show on Twitter. It's at CatsWhiskersTV and use the hashtag TCW Live, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the show if you want to get involved. Before we look at Panthers' loss in Coventry, some of the Panthers news since we was last with you last Wednesday. Still no replacement for Cam Jansen. Aaron, I'll ask you first. Now the season has started, is that becoming a bit of a worry?
I'm not overly worried at this precise moment in time because I think it was never going to be a quick solution, really. I think we could have gone down that route of a quick solution, but I think it's very important that we get the right man in. But, you know, if in 2-3 weeks worth of podcasts it's in the same situation, then I would be slightly worried. I think if we get an announcement within the next week, then I think, you know, fair play, obviously depending on the name of the person that we signed, but it seems like Corey's active from what we've heard so far. So I'd be far more concerned and worried if there was just kind of no news regarding that. And, you know, we don't hear anything about it. So at this precise moment in time, I'm not overly worried.
Andy, I'll ask you, who do you think can step up into that role if required?
Anyone that wants to throw some hits and create a bit of energy. I suppose coming from a weekend, it would probably be Jeff Brown on first viewing. But you know, ultimately they're all at some point during the season they're all going to have to stick up for one another and themselves, and regardless of whoever is in at that time, I'm sure other people will step up to the plate. But I think on first viewing, I think Jeff Brown, I think he's probably the only one really that showed any sort of bad side of it on Sunday. But you know, who's to say that some of the other guys won't also join him?
What about Farmer, who always seems to be in amongst the fists when they start flying? He's not what you would call an enforcer as such, but he does always seem to be heavily involved.
Yeah, that's his role. That's what he's always done in his career in the Elite League. Is he's been that wind-up merchant, the guy to get involved and start it all. And you know, he's a damn good player and probably one that we could do with more on the ice than perhaps some of the others at times, especially when you regard the weekend they had in pre-season with the hat-trick and stuff. You know, he's a damn good player, and that side of him is ultimately you will always get. That's what makes him that type of player. That's what makes him so good.
Of course, no news on the replacement for Jansen. As soon as it is announced by the Panthers, we will, of course, discuss it on the show. Also from the Panthers last week, the captain and alternate captains were announced just prior to the game against the Coventry Blaze. As we discussed on the podcast last week, Brad Moran gets the captaincy, which I think a lot of us said, and the alternate captaincies go to Jeff Waugh, Steve Lee and Jeff Brown. Tina, you happy with that quartet?
Yeah, I think so. Steve Lee had the A last season. I mean, obviously, we don't know an awful lot about Jeff Brown as an alternate captain. So he'll, I'm sure he'll take the gauntlet and run with it. But yeah, Brad Moran as I say, I think that was probably the most sensible appointment I think anybody else getting to see it might have raised some eyebrows. I think Moran's got a good head on his shoulders, so yeah, definitely the right choice.
Aaron, the appointment of Jeff Waugh as an alternate captain seemed to raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, and it raised a bit of an eyebrow for me as well, because I always see him as, and I suppose this depends on what you want from your captain and your alternates, but just as a quiet person. And I was surprised at that, to be honest. I thought it might have been, one of the newbies on defence, either Spang or maybe even Sertic or something like that. But, I think it's a nice mix. You've got 2 forwards, 2D. Stevie Lee, I think, is a given, or was a given, and I think he'll grow into that really well this season. I think Stevie Lee will have a big season, and I just think, going back to kind of what Andy said on the previous question about Jeff Brown, I think that is potentially why he would have been given an A. Obviously, like Tina says, we've not seen a lot of him, but I think that kind of energy and that grittiness that he will bring to his game will suit having the A on there. So yeah, slight surprise with Jeff Waugh, but it's another player from last season, isn't it? So they'll know what the Panthers expect and what we expect as a fan base as well.
Okay. Andy, anything to add to any of
that? No, not really. I don't think I was overly surprised at Waugh. At the end of the day, there's 3 alternatives and a captain, so I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it's all sort of shared out between the 4 of them. If Waugh was made captain, I could understand that there might be a few eyebrows raised with the appointment, but I think all in all, it's he's an experienced player, and as Aaron has said, I think one of the key things in that kind of situation is the fact that he was here last season.
Okay.
So he knows the league, and he knows the refs, he knows the players.
Of course, if you've got any thoughts on that quartet, you can get in touch with us on #TCW Live. We've had a tweet from Allington Skates, a regular contributor to the show. He says, "What do we think about Brian McGrattan, who was touted as a possible replacement for Cam Jansen?" Andy, your thoughts?
I don't really have any thoughts, if I'm honest. I don't really know enough about him, other than the fact that he's a big body and he can chuck him about a bit. But ultimately, it's difficult to know how these sort of players will play over here. It's difficult to know what type of style they'll play. With Jansen, you knew what you were going to get, because that's how he's always played. He's always been high energy, and will drop the gloves. But with a sort of like a genuine enforcer in the NHL, it's slightly different, isn't it?
Yeah, Aaron, he's 35 years old, but has had plenty of games in the NHL and AHL. Do you think that's what we need?
Yeah, well, I've literally just, as I saw that tweet come in, I just quickly did a bit of a search on elite prospects, and I mean, he's had a stellar, last 14 years in, NHL and AHL. Loads of experience, 35, and Allington Skates' tweet is obviously regarding, just looking at it, that Brian himself has sent a tweet to the Panthers an hour ago with a question mark. So, what that means is, nobody knows, I suppose. So maybe it's a wait and see. But I think, and I've obviously not been on many podcasts this over the summer, but
yeah, who are you again?
yeah. Sorry, I'm Aaron, by the way. But the thing I think about replacing Cam is it's the energy more than anything for me. That energy that he brought. So a lot of names have been bandied about, and I don't think we need an actual enforcer. It's the energy that Cam brought, and I think that's difficult to replicate. And you've really got to get that person buying into what the Panthers are about and what we want from that person. But, at 35 years of age and that experience that Brian McGrattan has had, then you would hope that he understood or would understand his role. And I do think we need somebody in that kind of mould.
We've just actually, sorry to jump in here, guys. We've had a reply from a mate of the show, Anton Marijan. He says that McGrattan would have been amazing 2 or 3 years ago. Not sure now. One of his all-time Flames favourites. And I know he's a Flames fan himself, so he would be able to sort of speak with a bit of authority on that, really.
But ultimately, I mean, that's the other thing as well. Is you got to, in the teams that he's played for. He's done a very good job, and with that in mind, he could be an ideal fit, because he would have been. You'd like to think that in a team like Calgary, where certainly the past 4 or 5 seasons, they've been towards the other end of the table. His sort of role would have been very much a leadership and obviously energy, as opposed to being in a top end team where he probably wouldn't have had many games. It's the reason why he's had so many games is because of the team he was in. So, he's made a good career, and obviously if he does come, then he should be a decent fit, because ultimately that's what the coaches see fit. But also as well, I do think that there will be some level of expectation with it because of the amount of games, and obviously, unfortunately for him, the person that ultimately is coming in to replace.
Okay. Thanks for sending your tweets in. Please keep them coming in. #TCW Live @CatsWhiskers TV on Twitter throughout the show. If there's anything you'd like us to discuss, or you want to react to anything that we have already spoken about. We're going to move on to Panthers' only game of last weekend, a Challenge Cup qualifier against the Coventry Blaze at the Sky Dome. It resulted in a 3-1 victory for the Blaze. In the first period, Bjorn Bombis was scoring at 4 minutes 1 second, and Jim Jorgensen doubling the lead at 8:31. No scoring in the second period before Josh Godfrey made the game pretty safe at 3-0 at 44:58 after taking the deflection off David Clark in front. Brad Moran getting a consolation at 52:45 to make the final score 3-1. Tina and Andy, I'll talk to you about this because you were both at the game. Of course, it marked a debut for Henry Packle, our third netminder who we talked about last week. And Tina, I'll come to you first. How do you feel he acquitted himself during the game?
I think he acquitted himself pretty well, given that nobody had obviously told him about the Sky Dome nets. The first time that he had, a bit of trouble with them being knocked off, he threw a fairly decent Brian Stewart-esque paddy in the general direction of Dean Smith, but his cries went unheard. But I think he sort of settled down and got into it. It was a difficult debut. I think it's a difficult trip to go to on your debut for a new team, I think. But yeah, he moves well, and he seems to see the puck pretty well. I mean, the Coventry did a really good job of taking his eyes away for at least 2 of the goals. So yeah, I think he's a good acquisition.
Okay. Andy, how do you feel he did? And I noticed a couple of tweets during the game from you. You were sort of bemoaning some of the defence for being a -1, -2, -3, I think, on the ice for all 3 goals. Is that correct?
Yeah, Warren and Sertic were on the ice for all 3 goals, and 2 of them were, you could argue, not necessarily directly their fault as such, but it was, the first goal. They're both in the same corner, and the guy on the back door has an empty net and all the time in the world to score. So obviously you look at the defensive coverage from that, and whether whether that's Warren Sertic or the winger, but ultimately they were on the ice for all 3 goals that Blaze scored. So you kind of have to question the defence in that role. And I think it was the 3rd goal as well. Sertic pinched in to try and throw a big hit on the blue line, but missed. War then has to come in to cover the space, and again, it's an easy goal for Blaze to score. So it's early days. There's still lots of things to tweak about, but ultimately, I thought Packle played well. I think at least 2 of the goals, if not all 3, were ones where realistically, they were always going to score because of the positions they were on the ice, what had gone on before, and the fact that there was no sort of defensive coverage from anyone. One of the slight worries I had was a couple of the plays where we seemed to be very weak. Not necessarily weak, but we seemed to lose an awful lot of key battles behind our own net along the boards, which one of them led directly to a goal. And obviously, you'd like to think that these sort of 50-50 battles that we'd be, better at coming out with the puck than we were on Sunday.
Aaron, I'll come to you because on the forum I did notice that there was the usual after one game, oh, the sky is falling in, a lot of posters like that. Is that fair after one game? Or is there anything to worry about when I suppose you take pre-season into account, or is it really just too early to make any sort of assessment on this team?
Well, I suppose everybody's entitled to their own opinion, aren't they? But I would hope that, realistically, you can't write a team off after one game and, flip the coin on the other side. I would hope that, the Coventry Blaze aren't going to now all of a sudden think that they're going to have the best season that they've had for a long time. It's one game. It's, with all due respect, it's a Challenge Cup game, standalone. We all know what that Challenge Cup tournament offers. You don't have to win many games to progress. Yes, it's disappointing. You would like to start the season, or it's still pre-season, depending on what you believe, off with a win. And they were, a couple of goals were bad goals to give away. But like Andy says, there were things that you work on in training and are easy to fix, hopefully. But yeah, this is especially our forum, that's what you get on our forum, sadly. It's very negative at times, but it's the Sky Dome, isn't it? It's a tough place to go, and we don't. It's not one of our happy hunting grounds, sadly. And you would have hoped that we'd maybe be able to wipe that off straight away. But I'm not concerned. Look, I watched a lot of the webcast, which was a fantastic webcast. The goals were disappointing, but to write it off already is just a little bit silly in my eyes.
Okay. Well, one man who, of course, was very, very happy on Sunday evening was the Blaze head coach, Danny Stewart. Tina got to talk to him after the game.
Post-game at the Sky Dome, after a 3-1 loss to the Coventry Blaze, and I'm here with Blaze coach, Danny Stewart. Danny, this is your first season, as it were. Are you missing skating, and how are you finding it?
I've been asked that a lot, but I'm actually not. I'm not. You know what? At the start of the game there, the introduction, I got a little bit of goosebumps, and you wish you were skating out there. But after that, I'm enjoying being on the bench. I think my body is as well. And no, I'm not missing playing. I'm enjoying the coaching side of things.
How did you feel the game went tonight?
I thought I was very happy with it. I thought first period we came out, and I thought we really set the tone. We had a lot of possession in their zone, and got 2 goals there to go into the break 2-0. I thought second period they came back a little bit at us, and you know what, we held the fort a little bit there. I thought we stopped moving our feet a little bit, and we were a bit late on pucks, and we weren't skating off the puck as well. But you know what, Stewie came up big when he had to, and then I think the third period we reset the ship, and I thought we had a much better period in the third.
Was there a little bit of tension around the bench when you weren't scoring in the second, because you were obviously creating the chances?
No. I just this is a early on confident group. They just keep going whether we get scored on or we're struggling to score. So I thought we did a good job not trying to force things when goals weren't coming, and you know what, we got lucky with that one there with the third one. But you know what, that's a complete result of putting pucks toward the net and that puck possession as well. So the more time we spent in their end, the better for us.
Obviously, as is the nature of the game and the sport, players come and go, coaches come and go, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the intensity of a Panthers Blaze game still seems to set the bar. This one doesn't seem to be any different. We've had a couple of scuffles tonight. What would you, coming in, attribute that atmosphere to, do you think?
I think early season you always see that. I think it's common. I mean, no matter where you are, the games right at the start of the year seem to be as intense as possibly the ones at the end of the year. Everyone's excited to get going. Everyone's, in good health and full of energy. So And you know what? Nottingham's a fantastic hockey team. They got a lot of talent over there, a lot of depth. And for us to win games against them, we're going to have to play that way and play for 60 minutes and compete and outwork them and play physical when needed. So, it was good to see, and I'm sure it was a great showcase for the fans as well.
Just sort of based on tonight's game, obviously this is the first regular season game. Where do you think you're going to have to put the tweaks in and the little improvements going forward?
Well, I think early days, it's just getting rid of the bad habits. Guys. I mentioned to the guys today. It's within our system, we're giving the guys a little bit of creativity up front, but it's recognizing when you have space and the time to be creative, or when you're a bit isolated and time to put pucks in good positions and be a little bit more simple. So it's the habits from the summer. A lot of these guys, they don't play any competitive hockey during the summer, and they're playing shinny, and they're trying shinny things and that reactionary thing, to pucks going either way, and all those bad habits. But we get another week here. We get another exhibition game to kind of work through those things, and hopefully by next weekend we're a little bit more tidy.
So I just have one final question for you. You may or may not remember, we had you on the Cats Whiskers podcast when you were up in Fife last season. After the interview, you sort of chided us a little bit because we didn't ask you any difficult questions. So I'm going to ask you a difficult question. Okay. Are the Blaze going to win the league?
Are we going to win the league?
Yeah.
Oh, it's early days. We're certainly going to compete for the league.
Dodging the question.
No, it's not dodging the question. To me, that's a bit over. A little bit too much cockiness to come out and say that early days after the first game. I mean, our goal is to compete for the league and be there and compete for everything, Challenge Cup, League, and playoffs. So, I like this group, and I think we're going to be up there when the season finishes.
Nah, I'm just messing with you, Danny. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries. Cheers.
Blaze head coach Danny Stewart there, obviously a very happy man after a great victory for his side on Sunday evening. Moving on to the other Elite League Challenge Cup games that took place over the weekend, and a great weekend for the Fife Flyers with a 5-2 victory at home over the Belfast Giants on Saturday, followed that up with a 4-3 overtime victory against the Braehead Clan in Braehead on Sunday. And Tina, Fife, I think, could be dark horses this season. They look to have built a very good, very offensive team, and I think they've got a chance of doing some damage to the probably more established, bigger clubs.
Well, it's a little bit worrying when we're going to be playing them this weekend.
Exactly.
That it doesn't
save
bode
it till
well.
later.
Yeah,
that's coming up.
Doesn't bode well, but yes.
Keep your powder dry.
The only thing I would say about that is that we were saying similar things about Edinburgh last season, and then they just spectacularly nosedived. So as long as they can sustain it, then yes, they're going to look good for it. But that's the key thing. It's sustaining it.
Aaron, I mean, 5-2 against Belfast. That's a hell of a result.
Yeah, it's a good result, and I saw on Twitter that some Belfast fans were similar to our fans after the Coventry game, giving up the ghost already, and then I believe it was Paddy from A View from the Bridge sort of pointed to the fact that they had players missing. It's the first game of the season, a challenge, all that stuff that we've kind of said already. But you still, it's still a very good result. But you think back to Fife at kind of. Early in the off season, they didn't have anybody signed. Obviously Danny Stewart had left to go to Coventry, but they've, looking at their roster now, they've made some good signings for me. Obviously keeping Justin Fox, signing Matthew Siska from the Storm, I think is a great signing.
I think Ryan Dingle was a big re-signing for them because I thought he was excellent last season.
And you know what? Even somebody like Russ Moyer. The experience that he will provide on the blue line, I think they've been clever. But you just like Tina says, you kind of said that with Edinburgh last season. You just never know. But 2 wins out of 2 over the weekend is you can't get a better start than that. So let's just be thankful that they've got their 2 victories out of the way and they'll lose this weekend.
We'll see. The other result was Sheffield 6, Manchester 4 at Sheffield Arena on Sunday. Andy, a much-needed victory for Sheffield after their Champions Hockey League exploits so far this season. But reports I was hearing from that game was actually that their defence looked a bit all over the place.
Well, that's Yeah, I mean, ultimately, wins are always good to build momentum, especially after a couple of losses. Again, they've played a lot of games. Well, they've had a lot of time together, and they've played a few games against very good opposition. And obviously now they're sort of coming back down to the reality of the Elite League now, and I imagine it will take a bit of time to get used to because of what they have been used to. I think they will be fitter than the teams because of the games they've played, but I don't necessarily think that it sort of not necessarily prepares you. I don't think that's the right word, but along those sort of lines as to how the game's played in our league compared to the CHL. We've seen it before. I seem to remember, I think it was Rouen, where the beginning of the season we were fantastic and hardly lost a game. We went to Rouen, lost all 3 games, and then we came back and couldn't buy a win for ages. And it's things like that where you sort of you play competitive games against a certain style of team, and then you come back to the Elite League where it's a different style, and all of a sudden you've got to readjust and adapt again. So I'm sure it will take a bit of time, but I certainly think that with the games they've played and who they've played especially, I've no doubt that they will probably be the fittest team at the start of the season.
And Steelers, of course, take on Red Bull Salzburg in their final Champions League game on Sunday at 6 o'clock. That will be live on Premier Sports. Other news that has taken place over the weekend: Tony Smith was interviewed on the Elite League website by Seth Bennett. Lots of snippets coming from that interview. The headlines were no goal line technology yet due to issues with a couple of arenas and rinks that are unable to host it. An overhaul of the EIHL website and new live scoring system, which I believe went live this weekend. And also no renewal of the TV deal with Premier Sports, and as of yet there is no TV deal in place. Aaron, as our standard media guy, what's your opinion on that?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because you don't know the ins and outs of that TV, that previous TV deal. But I know a lot of people talk about the fact that Premier Sports, it's something that you have to subscribe for. So limited kind of viewing figures available, but it was a TV deal, and I think what it means is that it will kind of give the onus to the clubs to provide webcasts, and I have to say some of the webcasts that you now get are extremely good quality. They are pretty much like a TV production, which is positive. But you would hope that for the sport to grow even further and wider, that a TV deal really needs to be in place. And obviously, the Challenge Cup final was on BBC Online last year, so maybe that's an option that they might be looking at. I don't know. So it's an interesting. If I get the words out, it's an intriguing.
Interesting.
That's interesting and intriguing situation. But I think Premier Sports did a good job while they took charge of it, and they put their full weight behind it, as far as I know. So it's kind of a wait and see for me. We'll see.
Well, Can I just jump in actually, because I think we probably need to take this opportunity to speak to somebody who was actually involved in with Premier Sports. Jono, as we know, was vested with the gilet of power, and was actually working for 24/7 TV, who are hosting those broadcasts. So I would just maybe just sort of deflect the question over to Jono for a moment. Sorry to cut you off there, Andy, but yeah. So what are your thoughts on it, Jono?
Well, from what I can understand and what I've managed to pick up, I believe that Premier did offer a money deal for 3 years worth of coverage, which was turned down or wasn't agreed. The Elite League have decided to go their own way, and I believe are looking for a free-to-air deal with a broadcaster that I assume is available on Freeview Television throughout the UK. Now that's quite exciting. Now Premier Sports, as you know, did a brilliant job, and they employed some great people as well to work on those broadcasts.
Oh, did they?
And no, in all seriousness, I thought the Premier Sports coverage was really very, very good. It's a shame from the basis that hockey in this country is broadcast on Premier Sports. They've got DEL, SHL, NHL. And I think having the top league in this country was good. Being within that company, within those other leagues, it was the go-to channel for hockey fans within the UK. The downside of that is only really hockey fans know about it. If you get a free-to-air deal, a lot more people are going to be exposed to UK ice hockey, which can only be a good thing. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months, and I think if the Elite do manage to get that free to air deal, then the potential exposure that can give the league can only be a good thing. But at the same time, I think it's a massive shame that it won't be shown on Premier Sports, because I think they did a very, very good job with it. Andy, did you want to come in earlier?
No, it's all right.
Okay, we shall move on. A couple of the other things that was in there. No goal line technology. I mean, this has been going on for a couple of years now, and it really does need to get sorted. I believe 8 of the arenas are set up, but 2 of the arenas, from what Tony Smith was saying, are having landlord issues with getting it set up. So, Andy, that's not good news.
Well, not if we want to be taken seriously. No, it's not. Ultimately, it's another thing that sort of sets our league apart for probably the wrong reasons. You know, it shouldn't be too difficult to implement. It shouldn't detract anything from the game. If there is TV deals, which I don't think there will be, because I think it reeks of by our webcasts, then it won't detract from the TV spectacle, and it amazes me that it's still not sorted. For years now, at least 2 years, if not more, we've been sort of fed this line of we can't do it at the moment, or we can't implement it halfway through a season. But don't worry, we're looking into it and all that sort of stuff. But once again, we've had another summer. And no resolution.
Okay. 3-on-3 overtime was used for the first time in the Manchester Coventry pre-season game at Altrincham, and also in the Braehead Fife game in the Challenge Cup, which you mentioned earlier. Fife scoring the overtime winner. Aaron, I think this is going to be a very, very successful addition to the Elite League.
Yeah, I can't see us seeing many penalty shot outcomes, to be honest. I think the 3-on-3 will provide the result for quite a lot of games this season. So it's really something that's quite exciting to see. And I think also what it will mean is that teams might try and win it, actually in the 60 minutes, because opening that ice up to just the 3 players, if you've got the skill and the application, then you really can get that extra point. So it'll be exciting to see.
And I was at the Rouen Davos Champions Hockey League game last night that also went to overtime. They've implemented 3-on-3 in the Champions Hockey League, and I think it was 22 seconds before the Davos scored the winner. So I think we're going to see a lot less penalty shootouts this season because of it, and I think it's a lot better that it ends in play rather than of a penalty shootout. Okay,
I agree in a sense, but it is still a lottery because it's so open, as much as a shootout is, I think. But it is better than 4-on-4. It's more entertaining, it's more exciting. But what it's crying out for, and there's part of me that hopes that it doesn't happen. But it's crying out for a particularly difficult, is it Rockford Ice Hogs team to crack? Because it's the year that it's come in, it's set up for Evan Mosey.
Yeah, exactly.
So good luck to the guy. But don't get me wrong, I hope he does very well. But if he doesn't, I hope that we've got him on speed dial.
One last bit of news that came out today. The chairman of Ice Hockey UK, Richard Greaveson, gave a statement where he says that a united governing body for UK ice hockey is closer than ever before. A couple of quotes from the article. He says, "My main objective when taking on this role was to create a national governing body." Also, another couple of tidbits from it within there. He says it's critical that in all of this we need a new national governing body, and the key word here is new. The process in reaching this goal requires an open, transparent and consultative approach designed by all involved to ensure that the sport can be successful in the future. We've seen things like this before, Andy, and it's welcome that he thinks something is close, because I think if anything this sport does need an overall ruling body and to be independent.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think it opens doors for not necessarily for open league tournaments, but it certainly makes it slightly easier for them to communicate and gets rid of some of the politics that we know goes on between the leagues that are running side by side. It would be ultimately the end goal would be incredible to have either a bigger league with more teams involved or a better cup competition with all the teams involved. But we've got to take it one step at a time, and ultimately, for now, it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, Tina.
Well, yeah, it's going to be a good thing. But yeah, the key word is new, and new and independent. A lot of it depends on the buy-in of all the clubs. I think Richard Greaveson said that there was going to be an AGM, and he's inviting all of the clubs to be involved. And I would be very disappointed if there wasn't a representative from our club to start with. I think the Elite League has to lead by example, and the attendance there I think is crucial. So. The buy-in of all the clubs is necessary, and and it being independent is also necessary, because if you just look at the Elite League as it is, you've got the chairman of the Elite League is the chairman of one of the clubs, and you can't have that sort of organisational structure if you're going to have a truly independent body.
Okay, we're going to finish off in our last few minutes by looking ahead to Panthers' upcoming schedule for this weekend. Our first Elite League games. Friday away at Dundee Stars, a 7:30 face-off, and a webcast will be available. Saturday away to the Braehead Clan at Braehead Arena, no webcast available, face-off is 7 o'clock. And then finally finishing off with a game against the Five Flyers on Sunday evening, face-off at 6:30. Again, a webcast will be available for that game. So, Aaron, I'll start with you. It's a tough start to the season.
Yeah, I'm not really sure you could get much tougher, to be honest. I suppose not sink or swim, but we're going to find out a hell of a lot about the Panthers this coming weekend. Take the flip side and play devil's advocate. Maybe it's a perfect chance, away from home, sort of not expected to maybe do much. Great chance for everybody to kind of team bond, those 3 days away. Maybe we'll see something that we might not have seen if this had been, end of November, early December. But looking at it, you think, it's. I'm pretty sure you'd probably want to open with a home game against, maybe even one of these teams, but 3 away. And I think it's the 3 fixtures, and taking it back to last year, I went up for this kind of fixture last year, and we were awful. Let's be honest, we were awful over it. And if we see that kind of performances and results, then it's going to get everybody off to a negative start, isn't it? So there's a lot of pressure. I do think there was a lot of pressure on the team to perform, and let's hope they can.
Yeah.
I actually think it's very good. I think it gets out of the way.
I suppose that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Andy, we've had another tweet in from Allington Skates. He says who to start the next game goalie wise, because this is going to be important, isn't it? Whether between Weekman and Packle, who actually starts these games. Can Weekman do 3 and 3, or will Packle have to step in to one of those games? What's your view on that?
Well, I don't see the point in making, if he's fit, making Wheatman start all three. So I think they will split it so long as Wheatman's fit. If Wheatman isn't fit, then you start Packle and you see what happens throughout the games. Obviously, if he's fatigued or if he's tired, then obviously you have to go with another goalie, whether that's a half-fit Wheatman or starting with Dan Green. But ultimately, if we have 2 fit netminders, there is no reason for 3 and 3 nights because they are both decent netminders. And we saw on Sunday that Packle is more than capable. So personally, if they're both fit, I think whoever is going to be touted as being the number 1 goalie, who I presume will be Wheatman, probably starts Friday, Sunday. And then Packle in the middle.
I mean, Tina, for me, ending the game on Fife, third game in 3 nights, and you've got to go to the old barn in Fife. And we've mentioned earlier in the show how a good weekend they had last weekend in the Challenge Cup. That is the one game I am really not looking forward to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that's we've had a bit of a patchy history with Fife away. Although, I did a bit of looking back over previous.
Looking back, right? She's now looking on her laptop at a huge spreadsheet. I will let the listeners know there is a spreadsheet with results going back 4 years.
It's not 4 years.
That's above and beyond.
No, it is 4 years. Blimey. Okay, so anyway, yeah, we've got.
She's gone very red back.
We've got a patchy history with Fife away up at the old barn, but we've also not seen. We've actually had worse success away at Dundee over the same time period. So, both of those games could go either way. I mean, you would assume that the Panthers will be travelling up on the Friday, and then on Sunday it's the last game of a 3 in 3. So those are the games that you would think would have the most risk to them in terms of us dropping points. But yeah, Fife away is a killer of a way to finish a 3 on 3. But I mean, having said, I've been up to a Scottish triple where we've come away with nothing. So as long as we come away with something, I think that'll be pretty tidy, to be honest.
I mean, I would think 4 points is an absolute minimum for that one. Okay, we are rapidly running out of time. So just to let you know that from next week, we will be running 3 live podcasts a week for hopefully the rest of the season. On Monday evenings, we will be looking back at the previous weekend, and on Wednesdays we will have our TCW Podcast, so the return of that for next season on this Wednesday, again hosted by Aaron. And then on Thursday evenings we will look ahead to the coming weekend. All podcasts will start at 8:45pm and they will be live. They will also be available to download in the normal way through iTunes, Spreaker and RSS or YouTube after the podcasts are finished. So lots of listening coming your way from us over the season. So very, very quickly before we end, I will ask you back about the Scottish triple header. So Tina, how many points do you think we'll get out of those 3 games?
I'll go with a what's the word I'm looking for? A conservative 4.
Conservative 4. I reckon 4. Aaron?
Minimum of 4. I'll be happy with 5. Ecstatic with 6. I think we'll get 5.
Okay. And finally, Andy?
2.
Sorry?
2.
Oh, Mr. Pessimist over there.
No. And for this evening, Andy Haywood has taken the role of Paul Baum. So
end on a high, why don't we?
I
don't think it's a bad return as such. It's early doors. It's 3 tough away games.
Okay. Well, on that cheery note, we will leave it there until Monday evening. So we're back on Monday, 8:45pm. Just time to say very quickly, thank you to Tina.
Tatty bye.
Thank you to Aaron.
Bye-bye now.
And many thanks to Andy Haywood.
No worries at all. See you later.
And many thanks to you for listening. We will see you on Monday. But that's it for this Cats Whiskers podcast.